I played all 6 of the network tests, tested all the character relics, how fast I could click through the press any button to sign in, and while I did have an absolute blast most of the time, logistically I have a lot of concerns around the framework of the online aspects of the game. Let's go. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on the network test. We'll start with the good, then the bad, then the mid, and then we'll discuss some things at the end. So the best thing about Nightreign is that it's basically Elden Ring's combat system, its exploration and progression loop condensed to like a tight 30 to 45 minute run. You can get the highs of like beating those tough bosses, but also the dopamine that you get from like finding new gear to try and then tinkering with like a build in a very quick manner. Even though in the network test we only had the one map, the one Night Lord, and like no randomization elements in like the world space at all, you can see how fun the gameplay loop still is, even without any of that randomization, even if you've seen that map before. It's a credit to the core gameplay loop of Elden Ring, but also of Nightreign and the tweaks that they have made here to smooth out a lot of those edges from Elden Ring and make the combat system just that tiny little bit better. Like you can see that sort of progression and the polish that's come on top of that Elden Ring combat system. One of the more obvious ones is that bows are definitely going to be more viable, not only because we have a like archer archetype hero, but also like the reticule actually seems to work, where you could actually use like this reticule to shoot arrows in that way. Like it's something you just absolutely wouldn't do in Elden Ring. Also, the decision to have these specific characters and like archetypes that are based around certain playstyles with their own abilities that sort of accentuate those specific aspects, like the recluse with the magic cocktail. I think it's just such an intelligent idea so that each character feels unique and you can also get that expression of how you want to play. And I enjoyed playing as all 4 characters, and it also adds some more variation to each session as well. For example, maybe you play the recluse, you play as a bit of a range caster, stay in the back line, focus on staffs, and then the next game you want to change things up and play as the Duchess and maybe dual wield weapons and focus on that playstyle for that round. It does add a lot of variation to the gameplay flow and trying different builds, which I do quite like. But I think just in general, the gameplay feels a lot smoother, especially being online. Like I was legitimately worried about the Australian internet and being able to play this online, like whether they were using their own servers or it was like peer-to-peer, wasn't really sure. And I don't know if they've specified exactly, but even still today, if I boot up Elden Ring and jump online, I can't guarantee that I'm going to have a good experience because most of the time it's not. Most of the time I'm connected to people in the US and I just am like littered with lag to no end. But that wasn't the case here. Like when the servers were working, and key when they were working. He left! You fucking left me! Piece of shit! Oh, what? Are you serious? The servers go down right then? There wasn't really any issues. There were a couple of games where I did feel a little bit of lag here and there, but for the most part, I was able to telegraph an enemy attack. I was able to dodge it. I was able to parry it. I was able to move around the world space comfortably and feel as if I was just playing Elden Ring locally on my PC. And that is really, really encouraging because that was one of my primary concerns going into the network test. And I'm glad that even for us in Australia, we will actually still be able to seemingly play this game without those sort of lag issues, which is quite important to me. Speaking of this online system, let's talk about some bad stuff that I didn't really like. One of them, and probably the main thing, is that in the year of our Lord 2025, we can't be using a multiplayer password system, y'all. Like, what are we doing here with this password system, guys? Like having to enter a manual password, like type in a code of your choosing, and then the next option under that, choose whether it's 2 or 3 players that are actually using that password. Like, what are we doing here? Can't we just invite our friends using like the friendship system on all the platforms that like every other game uses? I also think it's a little strange that we don't have like a lobby system here. So think about like basically every multiplayer game that you play these days, like your Fortnites and etc., right? When you group up with people, you are like waiting in the lobby together. And Elden Ring Nightreign has a lobby. It's the round table hold. It's just you're always there on your own, which is quite isolating in a multiplayer experience. It also prevents some of those funner elements of just like, you know, shooting the shit with your friends, which would really add to this game's like core loop. Because if you think about it, when you're on the map for those 30, 45 minutes, whatever it is, you are 100% gunning for whatever your next objective is because of that crunch on that time limit and the zone moving down. You're going 100 miles an hour to kill enemies, upgrade yourself, level up, find better gear, blah, blah, blah. And then those quieter moments of the round table hold aren't with your friends, they're just on your own. I would like to be able to screw around with my friends on the round table hold. Once I find some friends first, then I can screw around with them at the round table hold. But it would be nice if that was an option. Speaking of like the online queuing system and the multiplayer stuff, I did notice as well that when you hit commence expedition, we are queuing specifically for Tricephalus. So I'm wondering if the other 7 Night Lords, you're going to manually queue for them and they'll have like their own variations on the areas of the map. Cool idea, except you're splitting the player base across those 8 bosses, right? Like you can't queue for all of them at once and then get that randomization of just seeing whatever Night Lord you get. Hopefully there is like a completely random option because I suspect most people will just use that. Also, again, because we're talking about this multiplayer password system, if you and your homies enter the password, but you queue for Tricephalus and it's searching for that password in Tricephalus, but your friends queue for Night Lord 2, does that mean that you won't get grouped up because they're not queuing for the same one? Like if that happens, you know, like I'm just very curious about how a lot of that networking stuff is going to work. And specifically if it's actually going to be a smooth process or if it's going to be like basically a Nintendo online game. The other major problem I have, again, links to the whole online components of this game, and it is the serious lack of communication with randoms. Now, an example that I had is like a Stoneswood key. Multiple times I would get one of these and you need to tell your homies that you need to go to an Everjail so that you can unlock that and defeat like the boss in there, right? The best way that I found to make people understand that I have a Stoneswood key and need to go to an Everjail was to constantly spam like the location pin on an Everjail over and over and over and over again until one of them realized that that is what I was trying to do. I know that you can ping items on the ground, though no one ever really did, but you almost don't want to ping things on the ground because it almost incentivizes randoms to just like vacuum up all the good loot, which is definitely a problem that I had, is that multiple times randoms would like not even look at the gear that they are just completely hoovering up. I even had a specific instance where I got like a purple talisman that was perfect for the recluse player. It improved incantation and spells or something. I can't remember exactly what it was off the top of my head. And I put it down on the ground and like I pinged it in front of the recluse and they like walked up to read what it said, and the wilder player just like zoomed past and immediately picked it up and didn't even look at it. And that's kind of a problem. And I think having a communication and a way to actually talk to your people, like a voice system where you can be like, hey bro, that was for the recluse, put that shit back, would be very helpful, especially with communication around bosses. Multiple times I just wanted to say something to the people that I was playing with. Most of my negative thoughts revolve around the online elements of this game, which is quite worrying considering this is supposed to be an online game specifically targeted to play with 3 players. Now, there are discussions that maybe they will have 2-player maps, and they will definitely have solo maps that you can do, so you could run these expeditions solo. However, I don't know how much you're going to want to if you're an average player. Fair enough, if you're some god tier speedrunner of Elden Ring, you probably will be able to do these bosses solo. Totally understand that. But the fact that these encounters are specifically geared towards 3 players and balanced that way, not only their health bars, but their mechanics. I assume the health bars will actually be targeted towards the amount of players you have. Like, that will be less if it's solo, but the mechanics, like using the final boss there, like Gladius, for example, when they split into 3 wolves, and the strategy in those instances really is to pick one of the wolves and kite that wolf and just wait for them to combine again. And you can each sort of kite one wolf and focus on that one target. But that's obviously harder when it's just you solo and you have to kite all 3 wolves and also try not to get damaged. But I suppose the benefit is you won't have to try and revive your homies when they do get downed. Outside of how absolutely fantastic the gameplay loop is and how poor the multiplayer systems are, there's a couple of things I'm quite curious about. And that is specifically the launch experience for a couple of reasons. So here in this network test, we didn't really get any actual legitimate tutorial and how these systems work. Now, if you look in the codex and you've got the sparring grounds there, you can kind of figure it out and understand like what this game is. However, it's quite concerning that these systems aren't really explained to you in any reasonable way, or even a just dry run of a run on your own where the game takes it very slow and explains the game's systems and the bosses have a low health just so you can sort of get your teeth in the game. Now, if you think about the network test, for example, right, you might think, why is that even needed, right? We all had no issues with the network test. Assumedly, none of us did, right? The thing is, most of us that were playing the network test, I would assume at least like 80 to 90% of the people in the network test were prior Elden Ring players, at least had some Elden Ring knowledge. So you have a reasonable understanding of what the Elden Ring game systems are and how Nightreign is different. When this game launches, it's not launching as a DLC, an expansion, or anything connected to the base Elden Ring. It's a brand new experience, and it is quite a unique experience. Plus, there are required multiplayer elements. When you can't communicate comfortably with the people that you are on runs with over voice to explain systems to them or help them in any reasonable way, and the game doesn't even explain these systems to you, I suspect a lot of us, like veteran Elden Ring players, are going to get in games with people that are going to be absolutely awful to play with. They're going to die immediately. People are going to leave games. You're going to get bad players. You're going to get griefers and all that sort of stuff in the middle. And it's really going to hamper the experience. Now, we don't know that's going to be a thing. We don't know. I suspect it will be, though, because some of those things already exist in Elden Ring online play, like griefers and bad players, etc. Chances are, with a game that is going to have a lower price of entry and also a game with a big name like Elden Ring, a lot of people are going to try this out. It's definitely going to be an issue. That's further exemplified by the fact that the game almost expects you to have that prior Elden Ring knowledge. When you find new weapons, none of the like status effects or anything like that are explained to you, how they actually work, what sort of weapon it is. When you're looking at these things, you have to expand the details to see, oh, okay, like this is a great sword, or this is this sort of weapon, and what does that effect actually do? You've got to read the codex. And I know the sparring ground exists and all that information is there. How many people are actually legitimately going to look at that and want to try and understand those systems? Because I have played hundreds of hours of Elden Ring, when I'm looking at all of these weapons, I know exactly what they are. I know exactly what they do. I know exactly what that Ash of War is, what type of weapon that is, the difference between a staff and a seal. I know what an incantation is. I know what a spell is. None of these systems are comfortably explained to you. You know, in a way, like low key, it's great for me as a YouTuber because I'll be able to make those guides, right? Like totally fine. But the downside is, from a new player experience who's never played an Elden Ring game before, that learning curve is going to be quite large. And why I'm concerned about this is because John Smith over there has to play with me, right? It's different to Elden Ring, where it's completely solo unless you choose to make it not solo, where John Smith over there can take 100 hours to beat Margot, right? Doesn't matter to me because, you know, it only took me 99 hours, whatever that is. But the thing is, we're going to have to play with these people and communicate with them. And I do want to be welcoming and invite people into this game. And I hope that there is a great community around it. But it's just something that I am worried about, that I would hope that From Software is aware that they need to explain how a lot of this stuff works, rather than assuming people are going to have that already baked in Elden Ring knowledge, which does seem like how this game has been designed. The last thing I wanted to touch on here is, will we get another network test before May 30th when this game does actually come out? Personally, I don't think so. I think if the multiplayer password issue wasn't resolved by the end of this network test, we may have got another one to make sure that this whole multiplayer password system works. For those that don't know, the very first network test didn't actually work because it was something to do with this multiplayer password system, which is interesting considering that's my biggest concern about the game. But they seem to have fixed that for the last couple of tests and were able to enable it so you could play with your friends. If they hadn't fixed that, I think we may have got another network test, but because they did, I think we're just going to have to wait to May 30th to play more. But I am genuinely interested to know what your thoughts are on Elden Ring Nightreign. Did you have fun in the network test? Are you excited for the game? Do you have any concerns like I do? Genuinely interested to know what the opinion is on Elden Ring Nightreign, because it is quite different. I think that's what makes it fun, but I also think that's why I'm concerned. But let me know your thoughts. Thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.